Imagine everything in your life is falling into place. Marriage to your best friend, a cozy and safe house, a dog in the yard, and you even plan on having a child together. You have all these hopes and dreams for the child before they're even born. You assume they'll be able to walk, talk, and function normally, but what if they can't? They may be born with a mental illness that affects every part of their body neurologically, or they may have structural deformities, keeping them from functioning just as all the other kids will, without even thinking about it. Wouldn't you do everything in your power to help them succeed to the best of their abilities? Wouldn't you look for people to help them in ways that you can't do on your own? That's what I want to do. I want to make hope become reality. Hi, my name is Peyton OW, and my topic is speech-language pathology. I'm a senior at Frisco High School, and I'm 18 years old. I'm the youngest of 3. My brother is Derek, and he's 19 and in college, and my sister Gloria is 27 and married with family. I have a rescued Shih Tzu named Prince, a cat that wears a cape, and a new little addition, our little Minnie. From a young age, I learned the importance of being organized, being that I've switched houses back and forth, my parents being divorced since I was about 3. I've also been known as the helper, from wanting to sweep the crumbs off the floor when I couldn't even reach the top of the broom, to wanting to climb on the roof with my dad and sweep leaves off. This passion for everything has followed me throughout my whole life. Now, I don't get as excited about walking the dog as I did when I was 7, but I find that passion directed towards other things now. For instance, I'm the committee chair in student council, I play the flute in band, I'm uniform team captain in band, I'm in National Honor Society, and also play a part in Health Occupation Students of America. The way I see it is that all of these different activities are building towards my character. I don't see them as a burden. Instead, they all go towards the growth of myself. So last year I also took ISM, and I came across the program from seeing my friend Bree Heath, who is a fellow flute player and a senior, carrying around a prosthetic leg at the end of my sophomore year. I was in awe, and I was not shy to march up to her and ask her what kind of class she could have gotten herself into to make this kind of thing. We talked about the class, and I heard about how amazing Coach Goff was, and Bree was quick to drag me straight to Coach Goff's room, even though I was like, no, I'm not ready. I don't want to meet her. But I walked right in and shook her hand, and I knew that it was, from that point, just getting the door open, getting my foot in the door, just like Coach Goff always says, is the most important thing. So last year I studied biomedical engineering, and that's a complete change from speech-language pathology. But I was interested in that from this genetics conference I went to my freshman year with Sam Ryan as the leader of it. And he talked about all these innovations, and I was really excited about all of it. So I went into the program studying biomedical engineering, and my mentor was Alan Nugent. He's the director of cardiac catheterization at Children's Health in Dallas. So he basically put stents into little kids' hearts by inserting a needle up the leg, a vein in the leg, and going up to their heart and extruding the stent. So the biomedical engineering aspect of that was that I also got to observe in a lab at UT Southwestern where they were making biodegradable stents for congenital heart defects. And so I did a lot of research about that. And it was really great to be able to see both sides of things, the hospital life itself, as well as what it would be like to be in a laboratory all the time. And so that's where I had a lot of pros and cons to consider over the summer. And I realized that I didn't really want to be in a lab all the time, but I did love the kids, and I didn't really want to be operating on them, but I loved the kids, and I loved seeing the same kids periodically, but a lot of times, if they got better, they would leave, or if they didn't get better, the consequences could be awful. So I really wanted something more constant that I could help them grow. And so that's where I found speech-language pathology. But actually, when I came into this year, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do speech pathology or some other type of therapy. So that's I looked at both speech pathology and occupational therapy on my interviews. So my first interview was with Liz Belletti, and she works at Kids Speak Dallas as a speech pathologist, and her husband is actually one of my band directors. So that's how I got to know her, and it was really great to talk to her. And I figured out that she didn't know what she wanted to do at first. At first, she went to college thinking that she wanted to be a music major, and then she switched over because she realized how much passion she had for kids' growth, just as I do. And she gave me the advice to maintain my grades throughout college and everything, because you'll have to get a graduate degree to succeed in this field. My second interview was with the lovely Miss Rebecca Dana, and she's my current mentor. I knew right off the bat, right after interviewing her, we talked for about 2 hours about just speech pathology, just her life and mine, and it was so amazing, and I knew that this was what I wanted to do. And so she told me she's a motor speech therapist specialist. She's the owner and clinical director of the private practice that she owns, and it's right across the street from Frisco High School, so it's really convenient too. And I loved how everything was family-based. She didn't just talk about the kids. At this private practice, they actually invite the parents to come in the room with the kids while they do the therapy with them. So the parents can learn as well and see what the therapists are doing that they could carry out at home. And that way they won't be as aggressive and everything. And she gave me the advice to find your spark and let it burn. Basically, find your passion and follow it. Let it grow. Don't stop. And I love that. My third interview was with Miss Kara Schoonover, and she's a pediatric occupational therapist. And so this was a little bit of a change for me to be able to see this kind of thing. So she works at Top Pediatric Therapy, which is another private practice, and my current mentor actually told me that she used to work there. So that was interesting, because here they do a lot of co-treating, where they might have a speech-language pathologist along with an OT or occupational therapist at the same time, so that they can be working on different things with the kid, but still attaining different goals. And she also does some home health things, so she'll go to people's houses and help them there. And she gave me the advice to work on any kind of job in college to attain a worth ethic and appreciate the value of hard work itself. My fourth interview was with Ms. Thomas at the Medical Center of Plano, and she works on all the floors. It was really interesting getting to see a hospital side of things, because I'd only been interviewing at private practices, and a lot of speech language pathologists or occupational therapists, they work at hospitals, schools, and private practice. So getting to see the hospital side of things was interesting. And she told me about how creativity is so important, because in occupational therapy you're trying to get people to do things that they would do in their regular daily living, but maybe in the hospital it's more of adults. So they might have some traumatic car injury where they injure themselves badly in a way that, you know, they wake up the next day and they expect to be able to brush their hair, brush their teeth, and they can't because their arm's broken. So they have to relearn things. And so she gave me the advice to never give up and don't let your patients give up. My fifth interview was with Miss Pam Graham, and Coach Goff actually gave me this contact from one of her past students. She's the lead speech-language pathologist for the district, and she works at, I thought it was really interesting that she works at both the office, the head administration building, as well as she goes to schools and works with those kids, because she speaks, she's bilingual, and so she goes and helps Hispanic kids also with their speech. And she told me that it's never boring, and it was really cool that she was able to combine her her primary knowledge from that experience of still being able to get out there and go to like the lower ranks and spend time there, as well as like bring what she learned there to the office. And she told me to observe as much as possible throughout my experience. So then throughout ISM, we do a lot of research, And my first assessment was over the career outlook. And there's a 19% growth rate, which is above average, and that's really good for speech-language pathology. And there's lots of different types of work that I said before, like they go to schools or hospitals or private practice. And that's what found it interesting to compare all the different private practices that I went to and how they had different aspects. And that's part of what I loved about my mentors, private practice, Walk Easy, Talk Easy, because they're so family oriented, and most of the other places will just have the kids dropped off and the parents go somewhere else, and then they try to explain things to the parents later in a way that they can understand, but sometimes things get mistranslated or other things like that. So, excuse me, I learned a lot about the sensory system, which I'll talk more about in a little bit because that pertained to my original work. But also, through my mentor visits, I was able to connect a lot to my readings. So one of the things I learned was about first brain response. So it's basically anyone's initial reaction to something. So let's say someone puts a hummus in front of you and you don't like hummus at all, and you just don't like the texture, don't like the smell, nothing, you push it away from you. That's your first brain response. It's just, nope, not going to have anything to do with that. Well, a lot of kids will have that, whether it's through our feeding therapies or through speech itself. So, for example, there was this one boy, and he was asked a question, and he has an auditory processing issue. So he was asked a question about a story, and every time he was asked a question, his initial response was, I don't know, and he would slam his head on the table. Whereas a couple seconds later, he would say the answer. So it was just that his brain had to take more time to process. So that's never going to change. That he's always going to need that time to think about it. But we're trying to teach him a way to bypass that, to have a better response, so that he could say, I need more time to think about it. Please wait a second, something like that. And I found it also interesting. I didn't know this about speech pathology when I first went into it, but feeding and speech go along together so closely. So a lot of times what they can't address during speech, they can address through feeding. Because if you think about it, you eat about 3 times a day, right? And so you're using your mouth during those times. So kids who can't even talk, kids who have apraxia, and they have no use of their air and knowing how to talk, you can begin to work on different formulations of their muscles through feeding. So that brings me to my original work. I found it through observations. I started to hear little things about the sensory system and was wondering about what that is. And so I wanted to teach parents and bystanders and other SLPs about the whole process of sensory integration, which is what they do at this clinic, which is also different than a lot of others because it's typically used for occupational therapy. But I wanted to explain how different sensory things can be used for speech. So this is a little breakdown of the sensory system that I made. So if you think of your sensory system as a cup, you have to fill the bottom of the cup first before you can fill the top, right? So if you have a hole somewhere in the middle, you're not going to be able to ever fill the cup to the top. So that's how the sensory system is. Before you can work on speech pathology, you have to work on everything else below that and make sure that's in order. So there's all these different components. A lot of people think that the sensory system is only touch, hearing, smell, vision, and taste. But really, there's a lot more, as you can see. So I wanted to explain some of these other ones, and as well as like the 5 basic ones, to parents so that they could understand that better. So that's why I wanted to make a brochure. And first I developed a rough draft about it, and then I edited it and sent a final copy to my mentor as well, so that she could put it in the front clinic of the office and have parents read it, and it might even go to other places. So this is the brochure. On this side of it, this is the front cover of it, and this is the back, and then this is the inside flap, and so this is the middle of it. As you can see, there's a lot of information in here, but I tried to break it down into a way that was easy to understand. So in the interoceptive component, that was at the very bottom of that triangle that I showed y'all. So the interoceptive component is basically, it's also known as the biomedical component, and it's everything that goes on inside a person and how their body reacts to that. So if there's something wrong neurologically or digestively, there's going to be problems with other things. So I wanted to make sure that you have to make sure everything's going along well, because if a kid's about to have diarrhea, you might want to know that before you do speech, because they might have issues with speech and you might think it's something else. So then there's the proprioceptive component, and that's any kind of joint compression or extension, such as jumping and walking, bouncing. And jumping is actually a calming input. So in the middle of speech, there's a whole dynamic that you want to make sure the kid is in the optimal region, so that you don't want them too excitatory and you don't want them too calm. You have to have them in the optimal region, so you might have to give them some excitatory input, and you might have to give some calming input. So the jumping would be calming, and that would release endorphins to help relax the body, therefore relaxing muscles in the throat and larynx and the body. And then they can produce speech more naturally rather than being tight and not producing the sound the way they should. Then there's the vestibular component, and this is the position of the human body in space. So there's 3 semicircular canals in your ear, and those help determine your balance and where you are. So basically, if you're spinning around in a teacup at Disney World, you're gonna get excitatory input. You're gonna be more excited, and your body's gonna have more adrenaline going through it. And then there's also linear movements, which are like rocking a baby to sleep, and other kinds of just one direction or 2-directional movements. Then there's the 5 basic senses over here that pretty much everyone knows. And I talked about how each of those go towards speech and how you can use, I didn't even realize smell is part of speech. Because if you think about it, smell and speech, you don't smell things while you're talking, really. But actually, it will go along with it, because you basically smell before you taste anything, And so that goes along with the feeding therapy sessions. And so then let me go back to the back of it. And in the taste part, I mentioned prompt on the brochure. And prompt stands for prompts for oral muscular phonetic targets, which sounds really wordy. But basically, it's using 3 different aspects. So there's emotional performance, cognitive linguistic, and motor. And those 3 things all go together to create the motor skill for communication. So you want to make sure everything's proper. And so that's what is going on in this picture over here. There's this speech pathologist, and she's touching this little boy's face, and it looks like she's just touching his face. But really, whenever they do a physical prompt on a kid's face, you can make someone physically produce a sound or help them get the right face to make a sound. And then this is just a summary over sensory integration in general and how this is used to help speech pathologists in kids. So in the future, within the next couple of months, I want to work to create my final product, which will be an app for speech-language pathologists to use with kids. And I haven't figured out all the little kinks yet, but I know that I will be doing all the content and research for it. So basically, there's a lot of apps already out there for speech pathologists, but a lot of kids, but they're not directed properly for the kids to be able to use them. So properly is the key word. So a lot of kids will produce a sound, like they might say pop, but they might clench their face and clench everything to make the sound, and that's not producing it properly and efficiently. And so to teach them how to use their face properly and efficiently for these different sounds, we want to make an app that will show maybe like a character making the right face, and then there might be an overlay of a camera portrait of the kid making the same face, and then they have to get their face in that region for it to be correct and move on to the next word. So I'll have to go to elementary schools and record and measure kids, like normal kids, within a certain age group and their range of motion of their face for certain sounds. And so over the summer and over all of my breaks coming like within college and so on, my mentor has offered me a job at Walk Easy Talk Easy as a tech. And so I'm really excited about that because I'll be able to observe and learn to do little jobs around there while I work. So after this summer, I'll attend Texas A&M studying biology, and I might switch over to psychology. I haven't decided yet for my undergraduate degree. Then for my graduate degree, I'll go to the University of North Texas to study speech-language pathology. I'd like to leave you all with this quote. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. And this is by Mother Teresa. So just one person can affect another, and that will go on and keep going. So I'd like y'all to all think about this as you go through the rest of your day and even the rest of your life. Thank you.